Good morning and welcome to SEN Stream. This morning we have a special guest joining us for a Q&A session. That guest is Dr. Alizon Draper. She's here to talk about the CASP assessment. Please line up your questions so we can provide some answers in the chat. Following that, we'll have a quick Q&A session with Mike. Guys, stay tuned to find out more. Liza, please, welcome to the SEN Stream studio.
Good morning, everyone.
Liza is no stranger to SEN Stream. I think the last time we spoke to each other, we were in here, and then we've also done a session in a dinky office as well. Welcome to the stream. I think we've got about 8 or 9 people watching us this morning. If I just head across to the chat and just find out exactly who we've got with us this morning. So I'd like to say good morning to the folks that are watching, and also for the GPHN students who may not be familiar with the format, just to get a bit of a feel for it. So first of all, good morning, Miguel. We've also got Fran and Adam. We've got Serval, and I think that's all we've got who's let us know who is in the chat this morning. If you are watching, don't be shy. Please do say hello. The whole purpose of today's stream is to make sure that you guys have got the opportunity to ask Liza some questions with regards to the CASP assessment. So me and Liza are just going to have a bit of a chat. While you guys think about some of the questions, I'm going to ask some generic questions about the CASP assessment as well. We might have a quick look at the rubric as well, so we'll be sharing that on the screen, and any other resources that you guys want a little bit more insight from, we can share with you as well. So if you are watching, please do let us know that you are there and in the chat, and we can continue the conversation from there. Again, SEN guys, if there's any problems with the stream, please do politely let me know. That would be super helpful, because I don't always know the stream is working well. We've got a few other people coming in saying hello this morning. We've got Rebecca. Good morning, Rebecca. Nice to see you. And we've got Laura, who has been very specific about her course affiliation there. That's fine. Yeah. You're a guest today on the SEN Stream. Just remember that. I'm only kidding, guys. But anyway, thank you for saying hello in the chat. If there's any questions, please be aware I can see the chat at all times. It's open up on the screen. I will ask the questions to Liza that you guys post, and we can go from there. So without further ado, welcome to SEN Stream. I thought it'd be quite nice to just kick off, and because maybe some of the SEN guys, I think both of the cohorts have seen you a little bit so far in Research Methods for Health Sciences 1, and even a bit of concepts. Have you been in?
No, not concepts.
Yet. Okay.
No.
But nevertheless, they've seen you. But I was just maybe hoping to get the opportunity to maybe find out a little bit more about you, so everyone knows who you are, what your background is, and how did you come here? How did you get here? The pinnacle of your career. No, I'm kidding.
My journey.
Indeed. So yeah, over to you. Yeah.
Well, my journey is a slightly strange one, and I am a bit of a weird nutritionist, because as some of you know, I actually started life in social anthropology, so one of the classic kind of humanities, and then I crossed to the other side when I did my MSc in human nutrition. It used to be. So as I've explained to some of you, so what my interest and most of my work lies around is actually applying the theory and methods of social science to issues around food, nutrition, and also a lot of work around policy. And actually, if you look within the area of public health in particular, but also I think it's really relevant to you guys who are taking the SEN course, actually qualitative methods are being used more and more and they have a kind of an accepted place now within the field of kind of health studies and public health. So that's why it's really important for you, even if you don't want to kind of actually go out and use qualitative research methods yourself, you do need to understand the kind of the methodological principles, because it's quite likely you may well be using it in your future work, or goodness, you may well even be commissioning. So you need to know what's the good stuff and what's the bad stuff.
No, good stuff. Excellent. What in terms of your sort of transition from maybe your student life into a more professional life, what do you think were some of the key things that you did? I mean, putting Liza on the spot a little bit here, so
Oh my God!
because this is the stuff these guys need to know, Liza. What
was it? Oh.
What was the make or break for you, or what do you think was the key thing for you?
Luck.
Blind luck.
Well, I suppose not blind luck. I was incredibly lucky that I worked with some really good people who were very supportive of me, and I was also incredibly lucky that I was recruited out of the MSc onto a research fellow post.
Okay. Yeah.
Partly because, in a large part, because I had the background in anthropology which they wanted.
Yeah. So it's essentially making sure that your skill set aligned to the position that you were going for, and selling yourself on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And clearly picking up there on the contacts that you made in sort of your MSc PhD life as well, being a key element.
Well, and actually, in terms of contacts, you each other are your most important set of contracts. You know, I'm still in touch with some of the people who I did my MSc with, and some of whom I still do work with. You know, one's now at WHO. She puts odd bits of work my way.
Nice.
So, you know, they last forever.
So to give these guys a bit of an insight into your sort of professional life here at Westminster, what types of things are you working on at the moment?
Well, not so much at the moment. I mean, I've been involved with a lot of projects. So a lot of my work's, as I said, it's more kind of, I suppose you'd call it applied. So I've done a lot of work with the food standards agencies on various projects, like getting people involved in food policy and the so-called hard to reach social groups. So like people who are extremely poor, young people. Also a lot of work around food safety, which is more interesting than you might think, but not about kind of identifying little buggies that might make you throw up. But more, so this was actually for the European Union study. So it's looking at the sort of social construction of risk, which is quite interesting, as we saw you see big differences across different countries.
Yeah.
So at the moment, we just finished doing further analysis of this big data set. So that's for the Food Standards Agency again. So again, this is all producing. So use is using a mixture of quant and qualitative methods, but hopefully feeding right into policy. And at the moment, the other thing I'm involved with is a big piece of work for DEFRA. So looking at kind of pulling together the evidence on things like consumer attitudes to feed into all their future work. And of course, a lot of that work is qualitative research.
Indeed, yeah.
And a qualitative appraisal of that is, of course, part of what you do in any systematic review these days.
Yeah, and this is a key message that I say to all the students, is that an appreciation for both of the qualitative and the quantitative research methods within Research Methods for Health Sciences 1 and 2, the two modules that you guys will sit, is really key, because you never know how you're going to apply it to a given question. And we've got lots of different staff here who have got lots of different experiences about how they might go about doing that. So please do make sure you make use of this kind of expertise that we've got on the course to try and extract that application out, really. So I'm just going to encourage everybody once again, like if you have a question that you want some clarity on the CASP assessment, or you want pointing in the right direction, or if there's just something that you're not quite sure about, please ask it in the chat. I will definitely ask it to Liza. That's the whole point of today's session. I'm going to continue on with some generic questions about the assessment. We might even take the opportunity to have a look at the rubric, which we'll get on the screen so you guys can see what we're talking about as well. So with that in mind, tell us a little bit about the CASP assessment. Why do we have this as part of the course, and just a bit of a generic framework for why it's there?
Well, as I said, what it's all about is you developing your skills of critical appraisal of research, and in this case, specifically of qualitative research. So, as I explained in class, we have to use a different set of yardsticks for appraising qualitative research because it's based on such different methodological principles. You can't just carry over the same set of criteria. So there's been lots of different quality appraisals now to appraise qualitative research, and some of them are incredibly complicated. But the nice thing about the CASP ones, which were developed by, so what is it? I can never remember what CASP stands for. Critical Appraisal Skills Programme. So it's actually part of the NHS. Is they're very nice, straightforward, simple ones, and very kind of pragmatic. And also for those of you, so these are designed as most quality criteria, whether it's for quant or qual, what you call the retrospective appraisal of a paper. So the piece of work's been done, it's been published, you go through, is it any good? But for those of you who are thinking of using qualitative methods for your research project next year, they're actually a really good set of guidance notes that you can use prospectively. And so perhaps, for instance, when you're writing your design study, these are all things that you need to consider if you want to come up with a good design, and then from that do a good piece of research. So for some of you, it'll have like a double benefit.
Excellent, perfect, good stuff. So I'd say we've probably run this assessment a few years in a row now.
Yeah, no, we've used it quite a few years now.
Good. So with that in mind, Liza's got a lot of experience with regards to exactly how students have performed well in the past and also how students have maybe not done so well in the past. So dwelling on some of that experience, how can a student really try and do well on this assessment? What are the types of things that they should really focus their efforts on when it comes to the CASP assessment?
Well, in many ways, it's a kind of pretty straightforward assessment because you've got the CASP criteria.
Would you like me to pull this up at all? Or?
Well, hopefully you should have all had a look at it now. And as you'll see, it's a series of 10 questions that it goes through. And for each question, there's actually a really useful set of handy hints for you to consider. But for each question, you get an option, and it says yes, no, can't tell. And so one of the most important things is to make your judgment about. So question 2, is a qualitative methodology appropriate? Well, you might well say no, and that's fine. But the point is, don't just say no, is you've got to defend your decision. So it's not, because you've got 1,500 words. So if you just did a list of yes, no, can't tell, that would be about...
It'd be a dry read, Liza, is what it would be.
Yeah. So this is all about the move up to master's level. So you're explaining and defending what your decision is, and part of it is also you do need to read around a bit more. So some of the wider literature. So as you'll see at the end of my PowerPoint slides, there's a list of further reading, and also actually, so for all the sessions with me, the Robson book is the kind of core text. And if you go and look at that, in chapter 7, there's a whole section on the trustworthiness of qualitative research. So that's a good one to perhaps start with, and then explore some of the other papers as well. And again, this will all add to your kind of sophisticated understanding of research in general, and not just qualitative research methods.
See, just to tease out that kind of like level 7 type descriptor that we're trying to kind of ease people into, it's moving away from the description of research and very much moving into the critical assessment of that research. And as we've did within concepts, most of you will be doing concepts, well, all of you will be doing concepts at the same time. When we went through those papers, depending on which group you were in, and trying to really pin down exactly what has been done well on the project and how that really drives some of the conclusion that's been drawn, but also what's been done badly, which then influences and impacts on the final take-home message of the papers, which...
Yeah, because I said, well, it's like a process of interrogation in a way. Yeah. And actually for this, CASP has given you the questions for the interrogation. But you should always question, the methods of anything. Because actually, there's always that temptation to just be naughty and read the abstract, or leap ahead to just reading the results, isn't there?
Indeed, yeah.
I'm sure we've all done it.
Well, it's just, time is everything sometimes. And if you just need to get the quick idea of a paper, then, or as to whether it's actually worth reading. If you read the abstract and think, God, this seems dreadful, or it's not quite on topic, or it's just missed the specific area that I'm interested in, then you've been a bit more time efficient. That's the whole point of an abstract, really. So, build it so that don't just be descriptive. Use the yes, no, not applicable, or not available, or can't tell specifically. But building on that, being more descriptive and critical of explanatory as to why you've said that.
So that's the key word. Why? Why have you decided no in particular? Because of course you can take any position that you want on these. So for instance, the last question is about, do the findings have any wider overall value? It's for you to decide yes or no, because you may think it doesn't, and that's fine. It's about defending your decision. And that's where actually kind of referring to the wider literature will help you. So it's not a huge amount of reading we're talking about. So see, we do want you to cite some studies, because we've been very clear that in the word length, because 1,500 words ain't a lot when you get going.
Indeed.
So the word length excludes the references.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah. Hopefully that's clear for everyone.
Yeah.
And if you want some advice and guidance as to what exactly that means, then do ask. Again, that's the whole point. We've not had any questions in yet, which is making me feel a bit apprehensive, because
or it could be a good thing.
It could be where we've been very clear about everything. Everyone knows exactly what they've done. They basically already handed it in. Well, it'd be good to know in the chat as to whether anyone is in that position, but
that's next week, isn't it?
Indeed. So they have the concepts hand in today, lest we not forget, which is possibly why we've only got 7 viewers. So some panic editing. I would like to say now, guys, if you're in the chat and you've already handed in your concepts assessment, please let it be known, because I feel your peers should be good with that. So we've covered some things, like one key message there. Is there anything else that students need to be mindful of in order to do well on this assessment?
Well, I'd always say, like, actually with any assessment, make sure you check the marking rubric, because this is what we use when we're marking. So it's all very transparent now. And perhaps the key thing with this is some people think, oh, I'll put question 1, whatever. Actually write it as a piece of continuous prose, work on your writing skills. But people always think, oh, goodness, how many words for this section, the other. But if you look at the rubric...
Well, let's take the opportunity to transfer it across there now, because we can share that with these guys as well. So we have the rubric here in front of us. Hopefully you guys can see that, and if not, do let us know and we can try and do something about that. But if you talk, and I will navigate,
and we can get the first column.
Yeah, sure. Fail column.
No.
Liza, we're aspirational here. We're doing great.
We will look at that. But the point is that there's some weightings there, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of working out how many words do I devote to which section?
Oh, okay.
There's a big old clue there, right? And I've grouped them because actually, if questions 1 to 4 fall into a kind of natural grouping, because it's all about the rigor of the design. 7s through 9 are broadly about what you might call the credibility of the findings. And question 10, which you see given 20% to, is assessing the overall value. Do the findings of this study have any wider relevance, perhaps outside of this particular group of people, different illness, condition, or sets of behaviours? So actually thinking that through is actually really important. So that's why we've given that 20%.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about it, as Mike knows, I'm almost totally enumerate these days. But you'd be thinking about 500, 550 words then for questions 1 through 5, about the same for 6 to 9, and then maybe 400 or so for about just question 10. And if you think that's like one big paragraph.
Yeah. I would say I cannot emphasize this enough, that there is absolutely 0 point if you're spending too much time in any given one area, as in more than 50% of your word count is in one of these areas, then all that means is you're compromising the opportunities to score marks in other sections. Because it could be the best 600 words you've ever written. But the reality
it's heartbreaking if someone's devoted everything to question, 1, and scarcely touched on the others,
The reality of that is that you might be pushing 30, of the 35% available, you might get 32, 33% of that. But the reality is that you are then compromising your ability to score 35% here and 20% here. So that kind of advice that Liza's giving you with regards to really being strict on your word counts and even using the percentages for guiding that word count within sort of 10.
And it would be the same for almost any written piece of work, actually, wouldn't it? Because I always say, don't dive in and start typing, because it's very easy to write too much, and editing your own work's a nightmare.
Yeah.
So do a page plan, what, headings, word counts, perhaps subheadings. Think it all through, get yourself a roadmap before you start writing. Oh, have we got a question?
We've got a question. Miguel is coming up with the goods. Let me just, let's see if I can get across to our chat, and hopefully it will pop up. Excellent.
Just read it.
So I will put it up. Unfortunately, me and Liza, we struggle with the eyesight, and that's because of
Even
my
with my new
genetics
specs.
and because of Liza's age. Well, at least we've got the caption for the thumbnail here.
I haven't quite got my senior rail card yet.
Before I get assaulted, let's read it. So Miguel's asked, regarding the CASP questions, would you like us to include them in the essay and then explain our point of view, or should we compose an essay that answers all of the CASP questions?
What I would say is organise it according to the rubric. So, for instance, you might want to have just an incredibly short introduction saying, this essay is going to critique the paper by Graham on why women smoke, using the CRAS criteria. And that's actually all you kind of need to do, really. And then the next section, you might want to have, a heading something about, the rigour of the design or something. And then through that, answer questions 1 through 4. So you will actually want to, so you don't need to kind of mechanically reiterate them. But you will,
as well, you're wasting words by doing that. So I think you could be savvy about it.
Need to address them, and they do all kind of hang together. So you might say, well, actually, there was no clear statement of the research aims, whatever brief mention of this or this was said, but actually no concrete statement of the objectives. This makes it difficult to judge whether a qualitative methodology is appropriate. However, it would seem so. So if you write it, so cover them, but do it in continuous prose.
Yeah.
Because that's you developing your writing skills, rather than a kind of bullet point list.
Yes. Our external examiners, each course, GPHN and SEN, have a different external examiner, and they are constantly on our case about either examination questions or essay-based or report writing type assessments not being written in continuous prose. So now would be a great opportunity to ensure that. And also, it gives your work a degree of eloquence rather than it being kind of like a bullet pointed or a headed sort of segmented type.
It's still important. Writing skills are still important.
Indeed.
Whether you're writing a research proposal, a report.
Good. Yeah. Excellent. Miguel, thank you for that question.
So I hope that answers your question. So you do need to answer each question, but you need to, as I said, you don't need to kind of mechanically reiterate it.
Good, excellent, thank you. Again, any questions, guys? This is exactly how we'll handle them. So if you've got anything that you want to ask it, and I'll pose it to Liza who's going. Should we transition back to the rubric so we can maybe expand on? So we've dealt with the percentage weightings, and maybe we could look at some of the more intricacies of the grade descriptions.
Yeah, let's look at the merit.
Okay, so these guys can see this as well. So if you can refer to the paper, and I can navigate from there. So
you'll see actually for each of the kind of rows, the progression as you move to the right, i.e. to a distinction, is that it's about adding that kind of critical element and citing the overall literature. So if you're looking at distinction, it's saying so it's comprehensive, all of the questions are answered, critical analysis of the overall rigor, references to the wider literature.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You picked up on this before, but when you're writing your assessment, you would be wise to ensure that this is either open in a tab that you can get access to and constantly refer back to, or even better, have it printed out and placed on your desk in front of you. So
and
you
go
can
through and tick, tick, tick. Have I done that?
Exactly. Or so I know some students use a highlighter to highlight that, yes, they've addressed that particular element. And as such, so to give you a little bit of insight, why do we produce rubrics? Well, first of all, I'm going to answer this one. Is that all right?
Yeah, no, you go ahead.
We produce rubrics for 2 reasons. First of all, is because then it makes it very clear to all the students who are undertaking that assessment that the criteria of which they're being judged against is open, accessible, and that you've got a fair stab at doing the assessment well. So there's no hidden agenda there. It's all very clear. But similarly, if we think that around about 60 odd students are going to be completing this assessment, of which no one member of staff is going to be marking those, and as such, every single member of staff who would mark your piece of work will have access to this rubric. And as such, when they're reading your assessment and your submitted piece of work, they will have the rubric open next to the piece of work. That's how it works in Turnitin. And we will be selecting, depending on whether it's a 2, 5 or 8 within each of the different brackets. So if I just scroll up here, you can see here a merit, you will either be given a 62, a 65 or a 68, which kind of goes, low, mid or high merit for each of the different sections. And as such, I don't know if you're using this as a rubric which would calculate the mark, or whether it's indicative.
So it's a qualitative one, yeah.
So this is a qualitative rubric, which means that the person who's marking your work will use this as a framework for determining where they believed you scored in each of the different sections, but ultimately it will be up to their final discretion, looking across the rubric as to what they feel the final mark would be.
So you're marking the piece as an integrated whole.
There we are. Yeah. Perfect. So, but just to really push you on the rubric and its interpretation, that it's really we want you to be aiming for merit and distinction, full stop. Like pass is great, but merit and distinction is where we want you to be kind of driving. And ultimately, the pass, you should be nailing all of those as an absolute bare minimum, but then looking at where you can add value as you move through the rubric with those sort of level 7 descriptors, really, of exactly what it means to be critical, to...
So it's worth looking at them as well.
And we could look at those now, actually, but
because
it
they're
take me a little bit of
based
time to get
on
it.
the formal descriptors of what, as a master's student, you're supposed to be able to achieve. So some people get a bit panicky, but don't worry. It's arguably by the time you've finished your project, you're supposed to be able to go through and tick, tick, tick. So for some, so for most of you, you're just in your first semester. So don't there's some parts of it where it says about being an autonomous agent and stuff. Well, we don't expect that all of a sudden, but that's where you should be by the time you finish your research project next summer.
I'm just seeing if I can get these up as quickly as here. Here we go. One of these is in Scotland, which we definitely don't want. I believe it's in blue from memory.
Claire's put them in the generic criteria. I think she actually has the levels 7
Good
descriptors. And it's worth taking a look at those, because that is your kind of destination point. Yeah,
definitely. A follow-up from this may well be that we pop these up. Here we go. I think I've found it. That's level...
No, that's honours.
That's Scotland as well, which is not ideal.
So, did you have... was that the Scottish
I think it was
ones?
Scottish, yeah. So just bear with us, guys, because it's worth finding the correct version of this. I'm not doing this in the most efficient way. Here we go.
No,
okay, that's I wonder if I.
Well, it gives you an idea though, because while it's there's the kind of keywords you keep seeing. So it's not just about knowing; it's about the kind of critical understanding.
Exactly.
Critically evaluate.
So I will make sure that this is posted or signposted if it's already available to you guys. But this is essentially, when we keep talking about level 7 descriptors, these are the types of words that we're thinking about. So a systematic understanding of knowledge, a critical awareness of current problems.
So you could say, arguably, for your undergraduate degree, it's about practical understanding, which you see there. But the idea is you guys are moving on to the conceptual understanding, critical understanding.
I think this statement for the CASP is particularly pertinent, is that deal with complex issues both systematically and creatively, making sound judgments in the absence of complete data. So there we are. That I will make sure you, in fact, I will put a link to this. Oh, I've had a disaster there, Liza. I've just got rid. I will put a link to this in the chat so anyone who is watching right now can have a little scroll through if they wish.
Because that's Destination MSc.
Yeah, so have a look at that link, guys, and then you can take a look and go from there. Miguel has said, perfect, thank you, exclamation mark, which is fantastic. And we've also got...
Well, of course, I won't know it's your work when I'm reading it, but I look forward to reading it.
Miguel's an excellent student. It's going to be, you think it and go, wow, God, amazing.
Because we'll be marking these blind. We'll have absolutely no idea whose work is whose when we do it.
Indeed. Also, who has joined the chat? Stephanie, thank you for saying hello. Welcome to the chat. Let's move it back towards some generic questions. So again, we're just transitioning 1 second. Thank you to, thank you for the questions that have come in. If you have any more, please ask them. That's what the whole point of this is and don't be shy. There's no bad questions. We'll make sure that everyone benefits from the answers that are given today. That's why we're doing this session. So we've got some good strategic ways of looking at the rubric, about the percentage weightings, about how to interpret the descriptive language used within the rubric, and how you can nudge yourselves across the marking bands to nudge you up from a 2, 5, 8, and then potentially even into distinction and beyond. Please do note it says 78 plus, which means that if there is an excellent piece of work, it will be 80, marked proportionally. 90,
whatever it's worth.
Yeah, indeed. And again, both of our external examiners are very keen to ensure that we are accessing the full range of marks. So don't think you'll be capped at 78. That's not how that works. It just means that this is the minimum criteria for a 78. And if you've gone above and beyond that and the individual who's marking it thinks that it's exceptional, they'll get a mark in that column and it will be...
So it's basically, could it be any better? No.
Indeed, yeah. Typically, could I do it better myself? No. 100. No, I'm kidding. I'm only joking. They're pulling everyone's like, right. Again, questions through the chat. So I'm gonna move the questions on with Liza myself. So we've thought about how students can do well. What, in your experience, are some things that students do which is not good? So you've talked a little bit about just being sort of being very sort of robotic with the responses to the CASP framework.
Yeah. Well, and not balanced. Well, sometimes actually not going through thinking, have I answered all of the questions? But then also, so sometimes people miss some out. So you do need to kind of go through. But then also, I think as you mentioned earlier, some people occasionally will put too much emphasis on one and then scamper through the others.
Indeed, yeah. The weighting, we're kind of both ways really. The weighting is kind of key to make sure that you are that you're addressing each of the different sections, and therefore
about references.
Indeed,
that's the how long is a piece of string question.
Let's head over to the chat so everyone can see the questions.
Yeah, lots of people ask that, and it is a tricky one.
The questions have disappeared. Nevertheless,
someone was asking about how many references?
Yeah, so Stephanie's asked, in terms of references, what's your expectation? I know what it normally is, but I was just wondering for this.
Well, I don't know what your normal is, but my normal is basically, well, if you're arguing a point, you need to support it. So if you're saying, I don't know, wrong kind of sampling or whatever, or perhaps particularly when you're talking about the wider value of this, that's where you're saying it does have wider relevance outside of this. A small sample size doesn't necessarily mean that something doesn't have wider generalizability. If you're making points like that, and particularly to support a judgment, that's where you want to drag in a reference. And it's always hard to know, because in some sense you would say more is better. But I always say to people, aim for the kind of basic, which is the Lancet rule of thumb. So if you've ever looked at the Lancet, they have a minimum, the articles are, so this is a very eminent peer-reviewed journal. If you get a paper in the Lancet, you're super happy.
Career finished, retirement on the horizon, done.
Where was I? Oh, yes. Sorry. So their articles, 3,000 words. And if you go and look at the guidelines for authors, they're very strict. They say 30 references. Yeah. So that's about 1 per 100 words, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
I can still work that out. So I think as a kind of a minimum, kind of go
1 for 100. Yeah.
So that means 15.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, there we are.
Go for the kind of Lancet rule of thumb. I always think that works quite well.
The tips from the top there. I
haven't published in the Lancet.
David Gaze has, though. He published a paper last month, I think it was. He managed to be a co-author. Anyway, nevertheless. To add some value to that, so yeah, 100 words is a rough outline. So if you're less than 15, then there's probably areas you could support more holistically. If you're more than 15, you may be, I don't know. I mean,
you might find
tricky,
yourself fascinated by this literature.
Well, there is that. I mean, we're talking as if, if they had like 50 references in a 1,500-word piece, then it's probably going a lot of those references are going to get lost in the melee, if you like.
And also, don't forget, in terms of, they will take up some of your word length.
Indeed, yeah.
So don't go bananas. Because remember, in terms of word length and how to cite and how to present your references, read the library guidelines, which are lovely and clear. So that's the so-called Harvard system, name date.
Yeah, so
not Vancouver.
To add some value to like where you might use a reference type thing is that it's in the way that I tend to use references is
another question.
Just let me run the stream, Liza. Jeez.
Sorry.
Everyone can see it.
Excited.
I'm going to get to it. I see it. It's fine. It's fine. She's very keen to ensure that all of your needs are met, which is good. But with regards to the referencing style, the way I tend to use it is that essentially I want to be able to differentiate between my personal opinion and actually supporting something that is not my opinion. In actual fact, there is evidence, empirical evidence, that is available for me to support my narrative, if you like. And as such, like you're saying, if you're raising a point and you need to support that, that's how you're then differentiating between my opinion is this. Well, yes, it is your opinion, but at the same time, it's building on a body of literature that already exists.
Well, arguably, that's also what kind of draws the line between a personal opinion, like I don't like X or Y, and actually a kind of a professional considered judgment.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, exactly that. So hopefully that combination of, well, you've got a rough guidance there, a reference per 100 words, the Lancet guidance type things, but also a framework for ensuring that if you are building on a point that you've raised as a result of the yes, can't tell, no, and you want to add value to that, then building in some of those references to help support your narrative for a professional judgment is definitely the way to go about doing that. So Stephanie is put here, she's worried about getting a high percentage on Turnitin.
Don't worry, because with Turnitin, it will come up with the percentage, but it shows us where it's coming from. And actually, anything with a lot of references gets a high percent.
Indeed, yeah.
So we go look and say, oh, well, maybe it's come up at whatever percentage. Oh, but all of that is the references.
But I would add a little bit of value to that. I would be mindful, though, Stephanie, of making sure that you're not simply copying and pasting statements from the papers, which they might have said their particular concluding point, which you think, yeah, that's exactly what I think. You don't want to be copying and pasting it over. You'd like to
be your words.
Paraphrase the sentence. The reason being is that if we see a paragraph or 2 paragraphs worth of work where you've developed a narrative with regards to your interpretation of some of the papers that have included, or an element of one of the questions from the cast profile, that if it's when it comes up on Turnitin, and it's like purple, green, yellow, blue, which essentially means, yes, there's 5 different sources here, but if they're all highlighted in block, what that means is that they're an exact carbon copy of the source that you've used. However, if you paraphrase it, you speak from your own context and you provide the context for why the reference is including, which should be specific to your own narrative, then you won't get a high percentage score on Turnitin because it's your own words.
Yeah, so that's important. Yeah, no, sometimes the reference lists do come up as a high proportion, but we look at it and we see that and think,
well, you can, I personally actively exclude the references list when I go into Turnitin because then it gives you a true percentage mark for the piece of work.
Oh, so that's something else I'm going to have to figure out how to do.
Well, in theory, the person who sets up the Turnitin assessment submission could do that for you, but that's a whole different conversation. So there we are. Thank you for your question, Stephanie. Everyone will benefit from that because everyone will be thinking it because everyone does, is what I would say on that
I would say, and we always get some really good ones. And a lot of you who taking SEN think, oh, this qual research, nothing to do with me, has no relevance, whatever. And actually, you're the guys who do some of the best.
You heard it here, guys. GPHN. Nothing. No, I'm joking. We're biased at SEN stream, so. Okay, so anything again, Guy, I cannot encourage you enough. There's 8 people watching just now. So if you're one of those 8 people watching and you think, I'm desperate to ask this question, but I'm not quite sure how to phrase it, just ask the question. We'll address it and everyone will benefit from the answer. But whilst we are waiting for those questions to come in, anything else that you think, please just don't do this, or make sure that you go out and try these particularly? Is there anything that really springs to mind for you with regards to previous submissions you might have read?
No, I think we've covered kind of most of the points,
Okay.
and where people might kind of slip up or not understand what they're supposed to do.
Excellent.
But I hope you enjoy the papers. So one's a bit old, but it's a classic. And in some senses, in terms of the point of the research and why it might be relevant to any or all of you when you're working with people, possibly clients, is they're both about actually understanding, it's not a phrase I particularly like, but about understanding that there are good reasons for what you might call bad behaviours.
Interesting. Yeah.
So you can see maybe you're working with someone and you think, I keep telling them to eat X or do such exercise. Why aren't they doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And actually part of the point of this, often we have good reasons for our bad behaviours.
Well, there we go. Excellent. So there is going to be a point, guys, where unless someone asks a question, I'm going to have to call it a day. So if you're sat on a question, you're desperate to ask it, now would be your time to fill it in. I'm going to ask Liza one more generic question before we then transition over into an opportunity for the SEN guys to just have a bit of a chat. That's not to say that GPHN guys are not welcome, but we are going to be talking in a very specific SEN fashion. In terms of leading, so we're in mid-semester, well, we're in student engagement week, which in, yesteryear would have been mid-semester break, which is what I think most people should be doing this week, is just taking a chance to just kind of take stock and review and reflect on what's happened in these first 5 weeks of teaching. Looking ahead to the second part of semester, what types of things should students be focusing on? I think most students are going to be moving into this real heavy period of assessment.
Yeah, they'll be coming in.
So
hopefully
any
you'll
words
get
of
this one
advice?
out of the way.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of super early for you guys, but I guess some of you start perhaps idly thinking about, well, not idly.
Actively.
Actively thinking of what sorts of things interest you to possibly leading into your project.
So, sorry, go on.
What I always say to people, I mean, for heaven's sake, choose something you're interested in.
Yeah, definitely.
Because some people think, oh, I ought to do that. And if it's not something that kind of intellectually interests you, you're going to find it really hard.
Yeah, there's sometimes some students, and I'm not saying this is not right or wrong, it just is, who will try and game the project from the perspective of this will help me in my career later down the line, or that this title, this particular area is prestigious, or it elevates my position. The reality of the matter is, if you ain't inherently interested, like Liza's saying, it will be the most horrific grind you've ever been through. So,
and also, I mean, actually, and when you're looking at people's CVs or on job applications, I mean, with a PhD, it's kind of different.
Yeah.
Because it's a much more specialised area.
You're trapped. You can't get out. It's suffocating. That's always joking.
But not with a master's project. You're not looking at that.
Yeah.
In terms of job applications, any potential employer is not going to be looking at, oh, they did their dissertation on this.
Yeah, exactly. So, and as such, make the most of it to answer a question you're inherently interested in, explore an area you're inherently interested in.
Well, it's your opportunity, isn't it?
Exactly. You don't get many of them. Trust me, once you get into the real world, you suddenly have to address the strategic aims of the university, which sometimes it's not always clear what they are.
Or the strategic aims of the Food Standards Agency.
Which may not align with your own strategic aims or your perceptions of those.
We've done a few things which I was like, oh.
Yeah. And also, something that I struggle with as a researcher within sport and exercise nutrition is that the reality of the matter is that, yes, it's very interesting looking at, carbohydrate feeding strategies for elite athletes who represent 0.0001% of the population in real terms. And as such, no one's going to fund that research. So you might be inherently interested in it, but the reality is that someone is going to, yeah, exactly. Do it now in your project, answer something interesting that's going to push the envelope in that particular area. because if you do continue and pursue a career in research,
more and more
agenda.
research funding is kind of tied into predefined areas, which the funder has defined, hasn't it? There's much less blue skies research, alas, these days.
Yeah, true that.
Still, some funders would do it.
But usually with a health context or a wider societal impact or whatever it is, and not like you have to demonstrate that it's going to influence and impact society in a positive way, even if you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So,
yes,
anyway,
the impact agenda.
The impact, whatever that means. Cool. Well, with that, I haven't had any further questions, so I think we will.
Any more questions? Just
get in touch. Yeah. Are you happy for people to contact you directly? Yeah. Well, there you are. So if you
don't use my Westminster.
Yeah. Top tip. It's in your it's in the course handbook for the sport and exercise nutrition guys. But generically, because I know I'm talking to both cohorts, that if you're ever uncertain about what the staff's email address is, go to the university webpage and look them up, because that is their staff email account. When you're on your email provider, your Gmail account, and you search for Alizon, Draper or Michael Newell, it will send it to our Gmail accounts, of which not all staff members, they're not our primary email addresses. And as such, it'll sit in an inbox being unanswered for weeks.
Someone might find all these things that have been lurking there.
Yeah. So at Westminster, not at my.westminster. We've got another question that's coming at the nth hour here, so let me just open that up. We've got Piran. I apologise if I pronounced that incorrectly, but that's my best attempt. I'm confused. My own opinion and reference, like sentence in the essay with a reference, will it be too many references?
No. Well, you need to remember, at some points you might be describing the content of the paper. Say, well, the sampling or whatever was this. And that you don't need to reference that. But maybe if you're then making a judgment in relation to the CAS criteria of yes or no, that's the point at which you might want to support that statement.
Yep. Yeah, exactly that. So just remember as well that when
you read, but when you're reading other papers, academic journals, I mean, see how they're referencing as well.
Yep.
To look for examples, because they're not all. It's not like a sort of clustered with solid references.
Indeed, yeah.
So start reading some of the journal articles, and particularly peer-reviewed journal articles, and actually look at them for the style, the way in which they're written.
Yep.
How many references are they using? And often in journal articles, because they have to work to very tight word limits, they won't have loads and loads.
Indeed,
so that it's going back to the Lancet rule, which is purely because if everyone had, 1,000 references, you'd only get one paper per journal.
Yeah. But when journals were predominantly print, that was a limitation, as was black and white, as was lots of different things. Whereas I think, and it forces you to be concise, and it forces you to think about, of the references you're going to use, why is it that one that you've chosen rather than the 15 other potential references you could have used? And therefore, it almost drives you to promote the best work in some ways, or the most contentious work sometimes, as the case may be. So why a paper was wrong gets cited, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good paper. So
just as you'll see with both papers, I mean, of course, chosen deliberately, there's things for you to examine, explore, question, possibly disagree with. Because actually, it wouldn't have worked at all if it chosen an absolutely perfect example, would it?
Well, yeah, it would be tricky to do that. Piran's come in and said thank you, which good. Some feedback like that is always helpful. I was just to build on that as maybe the final point as well, is that obviously there will be a point where you might have addressed one of the questions from the CAS profile. You might have then supported that or built on that idea as to whether it's supported or not with an additional reference and some maybe one or two sentences sort of building on that. But ultimately, you're going to have to tell the reader explicitly about what you think about that. And as such, that isn't citable. You can't cite that because unless you have published something and you already said that, that's going to be your own interpretation and your own synthesis. And therefore, that's what I mean. You're kind of building a narrative, but you're building on using the CAS profile, building on some of the additional supporting references you brought in, and then you've got your own explicit statement saying this is what it means.
Building your understanding of the principles of research.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
of what's good design. And so in this context, it's looking mainly at qualitative research. But that kind of critical stance of mind is one that will carry over to when you look at some quantitative papers.
Yeah.
Because it is a kind of a way of looking at things rather than just reading it, taking it, you know, point blank what it says, about questioning.
Excellent. Cool. Hopefully that helps, Piran, and everybody else who is currently watching. So yeah, we've whittled them down to 5. I think.
But this is something you will do in real life, because actually, when I'm going to go back and finish, I'm just doing a journal review. So that's why they're called peer-reviewed journals.
Yep.
Is a peer is asked to review them, and it's actually a really boring paper, but.
I also have one to review, but it's slightly less boring.
It's rather less. So I'm actually doing the CASP equivalent, right? Or I'm going to finish it off. And actually, for this paper, it's about a pass, I'd say.
Okay. Yeah. Publishable or with edits or minor amendments?
With minor amendments,
okay.
I think.
Yeah,
or medium amendments.
Medium amendments.
Well, it's
medium minor amendments.
Yeah, because you often have options. So it is actually very like the CASP criteria, because I mean, very rarely, every now and again you get a paper that's great and you think, yeah, that's good to go.
Yeah.
But usually it's minor amendments, major rewrite.
That's usually that's usually either a reject, so therefore you need to stick it somewhere else, or make the amendment.
Well, I guess this is past, but actually, to get into a tip-top journal like The Lancet or Nature, I mean, you're looking at what, 90s,
yeah, but with a question that's pertinent as well, that justifies the
process of appraisal sadly never ends.
Indeed.
So our work gets appraised in just the same way.
Yeah, I have one for a diabetes journal, which is looking at carbohydrate feeding rates for type 1 diabetics and decide optimal dose, which is something I've published in, and they haven't cited me, so I'm a little bit irked by it. I was a bit like, oh well, I've done a bit of stuff on that, it's relevant anyway, it's fine. Cool. I don't think any more questions have come in. I will do one final check. Perfect. Right. All that leaves me to do is to say thank you very much to Liza for joining us today.
My pleasure.
As Liza has emphasised, any further questions, if you didn't feel that you wanted to ask it today, then you've maybe got a little bit of time before next week to ask those. So yeah, thank you very much for the questions that have been posed today. Hopefully you found it useful. If you did enjoy, like the video, obviously. And other than that, I think, Thursday today? Yep. We've got a weekend ahead of us.
It's Halloween tonight.
It is Halloween. My son's gone to nursery as a skeleton today. So there's that. He was very pleased about it as well.
Perhaps we should have dressed up.
Last year I did theme SEN stream. I just didn't have time this morning to do all that. But and also it slows the stream down as well, so that's no good. I hope everyone can hit. Yeah, they can. So excellent. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. So happy reading and writing.
Indeed. Good luck with it. I'm going to pause the stream just very briefly while Liza leaves the studio, and then I'm going to pick up on any final remaining stuff. I've got a few updates for the SEN students, but other than that, we're going to call it a day. So thank you very much for joining us. Take it easy. I'll be back in a second.
Bye-bye.
Guys, welcome back. Hopefully you found the session with Liza useful there. We've got just checking the chat. Stephanie, happy Halloween all with a ghost emoji, which is fantastic. Imperian, thank you very much. Hopefully your questions were answered there. I'll be honest and say, guys, I've not got the updates, the module updates and such like this week. It's a down week for you guys. It's a down week for the staff as well. We try and catch up on a few bits and pieces. So I've tried not to hassle anybody this week. The only thing that I would like to mention, and I will just head across and share this with you now, so just give me a chance to bring it up on the screen. But yesterday I invited you all to undertake the mid-semester feedback opportunity, and I'm just going to get that up on screen now to show you guys as to where you can find that. Let me do that now. So when you go onto the main Blackboard site, so my course, I don't know why the page has been resized in this way. Oh, I'm having a disaster. Let's go back. You can see here on the first thing, during each mid-semester, I take the opportunity to gain some feedback. As such, please take the opportunity to have a look at this, blah, blah, blah. And you can see here, if I click on the link, it takes me through to a Google page. Just ditch everything, get everything back to normal. And you will see that there is a Google form of which you can then take the opportunity to have a look at some of the questions that have been posed. I can see already, I was reading them on the way to the studio this morning, 4 responses have come in so far. This is what we see, just to reiterate that it's completely anonymous. So do take the opportunity to give your viewpoints on the course, on the modules, so that I can then take the opportunity to feed that back to staff members and to you guys as well. As I say, Laura and Bruno, as your course representatives, will also have access to all of the responses, and they will take the opportunity to have a look through all of the responses and come up with the kind of key take-home points as to what the issues were. So I can see here, we've got two responders are from the part-time year 1 course, and we've got 1 response from the full-time course, and 1 person mustn't have answered that question. You can see the kind of ratings that we're getting here as well. So fantastic, good, and it's okay so far for various different components. And then you can see the individual responses that have been submitted so far with regards to each of the different sections. So if you have given an answer and a response, thank you so much for doing that. I cannot tell you how invaluable that contribution is, because it gives us a real nice insight as to exactly how you guys are thinking and feeling about different topics. So thank you for doing that. So I did say that I would take the opportunity to anybody to ask any generic questions. If you do have any generic questions about SEN, about what's going on, for though I can see that quite a few people are still watching. So about 5 to 7-ish people, it keeps flicking between the two, are still watching. Do let me know if you've got your concepts assessment in. Let me know how you found it. Was it difficult, hard? Are you looking forward to it? Are you having a break? Have you got anything lined up? Have you already completed your CASP assessment? Let me know where you're up to. It'd be really good to find out exactly how you guys are getting on. Another update I'd just like to give you all is regards to the Roehampton conference. Some good news. One of the MSc students from last year is called Vicky Newbold. She completed her project. She's going to be graduating in November. She took the opportunity to submit an abstract. I can't remember if it's for a poster or for a presentation, but she has taken the opportunity to submit an abstract, and it was successfully accepted, which is fantastic news. It means that her research from her MSc project is going to be presented at a national level conference, which is fantastic news. And it gives you some scope as to kind of, the opportunities for you guys once you've come out of your research projects as to what types of things you might be able to do with it. In other good news as well, 2 years ago, I started a research project looking at the CYP1A2 gene of caffeine. consumption and its impact on resistance exercise. 1 MSc student, 3 undergraduate students, 2 placement students all contribute to this project. We submitted an abstract for a poster, and that's been accepted as well. So I have an undergraduate student called Julia who's going to be presenting that work, which is absolutely fantastic news. So the final update with regards to that is, so we'll have some active MSc-based research on show at the conference, so feel free to be proud to represent Westminster when you're there. And second of all, staff have been are being funded to attend as well. So the likelihood is myself, Sanjoy, Jane, Carly will be the 4 members of staff who will be joining you guys at the conference on the 13th of December. So it should be a really nice opportunity to get out into the national level of sport and exercise nutrition and just generally get involved with what is going on. So great news, and really looking forward to going there. And particularly as it's towards the end of the year, end of semester, it's always nice to have a bit of decompression. Maybe a few beers after the event would be quite nice on that front. So if there aren't any questions, I'm going to head over to, I'll keep the chat open in the background, but if there aren't any further questions, I will be politely calling an end to the stream. If you want an update as to exactly what is going on next week, I covered that in episode 6 last week. Most of the updates as to what's going to be happening next week are contained within those slides. As I say, I've not had the chance this week to get the module updates from module leaders, but I knew that we'd be doing the Q&A session with Liza today, so I took the opportunity to do that instead. So hopefully you found that useful. Hopefully your CASP assessments are all ticking along nicely. If there are still any GPHN students watching who like SENstream, do let me know via email or whatever it's going to be. And it would be really nice to get some feedback as to how you think the stream went, whether the Q&A session was worth it, etc., etc. Oh, Miguel's come in. Concept paper was a nice challenge. Submitted it yesterday, high 10, as it were. Going to take today off and continue the CASP assignment tomorrow. Great job, Miguel. Well done for getting it done. And thank you for sharing your progress with us. I would say a round of applause in the chat, please. I would do that if I wasn't incapable of doing emojis and such like, but I can see a celebration. It's food. I was hoping for like a cake of some description, but never mind. Oh, here we go. I can do some champagne. Boom. Congratulations, Miguel, for getting it done, and a day off well earned is what I would say on that front. Good stuff. I usually do bro fists with my son. He's pretty good at that, but I feel a little bit like I'd be turning into PewDiePie. Good job, guys. Okay, well, with that in mind, and with Miguel's success of getting the concept stuff done and having a day off today, I'm going to call it a day on the stream today. Thank you very much for watching, as always. Hopefully you found it interesting and useful. Please do take the opportunity to have a bit of a breather after the concepts hand in. If you haven't handed it in, you've got 53 minutes to do so. Please do make sure you hand it in on time, because you get a 10% reduction in your mark if it is late. If you don't hand it in within 24 hours of the submission date, you get a big fat 0, and you have to submit it again at a later date, which causes problems for everybody. So try and get it in as soon as you possibly can. If you are struggling, if you've got any life circumstances which are causing you problems, then please make sure you speak to your personal tutor, who can give you some advice as regards to mitigating circumstances, claims, etc., etc. But nevertheless, for the vast majority of you who are going to get it done, I've already got it handed in or are submitting it right now. Good luck, congratulations. Do take the opportunity to have Friday this weekend to just take a bit of a breather before you get the rest of your assessments done. Thank you very much for watching. Take it easy, and I will see you all next week. See you later, guys.